Welcome back to On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers, and my special guests, Angela Sherman and Simon Stone. I'm going to read a couple of texts out again here. Brian from Maesteg again. It has been a long time since the inception of the NHS. A lot of variables have changed since then. Perhaps an overhaul is due. Simon, do you think so?
Well, there was one in 2006 that the Act there totally repealed and replaced the other legislation so far as England is concerned. But the issue is one of funding. If you speak to anybody in the NHS, they say, well, great, we'll provide you with what you want, but we need more money to do it.
Well, in the break there, we were chatting, and you mentioned about this power of attorney, and I think this is a really important point, so I'd like you to go over that again, if you would, for us.
Yes, Angela mentioned that she held a power of attorney for her parents. Now, this was called an enduring power of attorney. An ordinary power of attorney would lapse upon somebody becoming mentally incapable. An enduring power of attorney endures through the mental incapacity.
So you can deal not just with their, share certificates and house things and finances, but you can deal with their health issues.
No, you can't. That's the important point. Under the enduring power of attorney, you can only deal with finance and affairs.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But when it comes to the welfare, there's the new form of this enduring power of attorney called a lasting power of attorney. And that has two aspects. One is the financial and property affairs, and the other side is the welfare side. But there's a big difference. I mean, that's very expensive now, and about 53 pages worth of form, compared to about 4 pages worth of form on the previous one.
So just to get that ability to sit in with these tribunals and make decisions on behalf of your parent, you need to fill out a 53-page form, pay a lot of money.
That is one way. I think most of these tribunals would listen to close family. And of course, in this case, the next of kin would be the father. But of course, the father is already in that position of being incapable of managing his affairs. So the only persons it falls down to then would be children.
Well, I've got a son here, Malcolm at Lincoln. He's saying, yes, my mum's in a home. I love her, but she wants to go. I mean, Angela, you've had a lot of experience with this now. If you were able to make a decision, would you advise people to go into a home or to stay at home?
There usually comes a point where you can't stay at home. It's either too dangerous for you to stay at home, or you just cannot look after yourself. And that's why most people go into a home. I don't think many people choose to go into a home if they are capable of staying at home.
OK, Linda, again, has texted in and she says, lots of elderly in care homes who should be in nursing homes. They cannot cope. This is a huge problem. Many elderly need nursing care. They should be treated with much more dignity. I could give you a lot of stories you wouldn't believe. Well, Linda, get onto our forum at www.edgemedia.com and let's have your stories. Why not? I can't read them tonight, but, for the future. And Stephen Walsall says, it's a disgrace. They can spend billions on illegal wars, but can't look after human beings. They are inhuman. What do you think about that?
I suppose every system is run by people, and people are either inherently good or they're box tickers. And at the centre of all this is a vulnerable person who needs protection and needs care.
OK, well, let's go back to your father then. What happens next?
So about a year down the line, from my initial kind of question, another assessment was done, and Simon came with me to that one because I wanted them to know that I was on their case, and also Simon was another pair of ears and another voice.
So you wanted them to know that you had legal advice so they couldn't pull the wool over your eyes with their nonsense about she uses a wheelchair for long-distance trips.
But it was also really good to have Simon there because during the assessment there are so many kind of comments flying around. It's useful to have someone else to pick up on things and to kind of question things that you might miss and to kind of raise issues that perhaps haven't been considered in the meeting. And it was very apparent at that assessment, and I was perhaps more acutely aware of it by that time, that there were so many holes in it, there were so many gaps, things that weren't being taken into account.
Such as?
The whole medical issue, the medical history, for example.
But once again, they weren't using the medical history.
No, and there were elements of his health that they weren't aware of still at that point.
So you could have said anything you liked. If they haven't got the records, you could have said, well, actually, no, he's suffering from this, he's suffering from that.
I could have. They would have checked. They would have checked.
Oh, so they kind of did know. They were using it for their advantage, but not for yours.
No, I suspect they didn't know at that point, but they then spoke to other people afterwards to confirm and to pull in the information that I said was available.
Okay.
So, but at that same time, in fact, I think it was the following day, sadly, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
On that same day?
I think it was the day after. So it was a very traumatic time.
He's still alive, isn't he?
He's still alive. And then everything fell into this kind of black hole. You know, the assessment had been done. Whatever was happening with that assessment was happening. I didn't know the result of it. But also, I was absolutely appalled at the way his cancer diagnosis was handled. And I feel sure that the lack of information that we had and the lack of any kind of support or care was down to two things. One, he's in a care home. Two, he's old.
How did they break the news to him and to you?
We went to a routine hospital appointment.
Did you go with him?
Myself and him.
Was that a standard thing that you went with him?
Yes, because I wanted to know what was going on.
Okay.
And we were actually going to see his neurologist. His neurologist also handles quite a lot of elderly care at the hospital and had the results of some scans that he'd had before, which showed that he had a massive tumour on one of his kidneys. So the neurologist broke the news to us, which was a real shock because we hadn't expected that at all. And then nothing at all, no information, no, you know, how will this be? What
well, the neurologist simply said, your father has got terminal cancer. Well, did they not suggest surgery? I mean, you can survive on one kidney.
He showed us the scan. The tumour is so large that it's very much wound up with a lot of the blood vessels. His view was that if they were to operate, he would bleed to death. And the feeling I had was that he's an old man, it's not worth it. And in a way,
They didn't actually say that,
no,
though.
in a way, I agree with them. But in a way, I also feel, where are the options? Where's the information? You know, what else could be done?
I'm sure there are skilled surgeons who can remove a tumour without the patient bleeding to death.
I don't know, but that's how I felt.
I think the evidence is that there are, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm not a surgeon.
Okay, so they simply said, your father has terminal cancer. Did they tell you did they give you a prognosis?
No, the hospital was supposed to get in touch with us to provide all this information, but there was nothing, and I rang the hospital. Nobody at the consultants department, nobody answered the phone. I was tearing my hair out thinking, how can this be happening? You know, where's the support for somebody who's just been told they have cancer and they're going to die? There was none. Eventually, we were contacted by the local hospice. And at that point...
How did they know about your father?
They must have been told via the consultant who contacted the GP, I think, but I don't really know. Okay. But at that point, the person who contacted me from the hospice was the only person in this whole thing who had ever shown any proactive interest in either my father or my mother. So I was actually really pleased they'd contacted me.
Well, it's my own experience of hospices is that they're not funded by the NHS at all. All their funding is from fundraising activities and charity work and so on. And a lot of them do a fantastic job. I do know that from my own experience.
Yes.
So presumably they're people with the right motives.
I guess so, yes. And you know, I think one of the hospice nurses goes in every few weeks to see my father. And that's, you know, the fact that, you know, he may not want to see them or that they can't actually do anything is actually irrelevant, because the fact that they're doing that is such a good support to know that someone else is there and actively doing something.